Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Hyderabad Power Platform User Group. Today it's our June meetup, and we have two interesting sessions presented by Nanddeep Nachan and Einar. So, first up, we have Nanddeep, and he's going to talk about custom connectors and Power Platform. And then the second session is going to be by Einar, where he's going to talk about create a Canvas app that can take pictures and save them to SharePoint list. So, this is our agenda for today. In case you have any questions, you can use the comments box on YouTube. And once our speakers are done with their sessions, uh, I'll read out the questions to them and then they can answer any of your queries. With that, let's get started. Hey Nandadeep, welcome to Hyderabad Power Platform User Group.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. Hi. Yeah, okay. So we can get started, right?
Yes, we can get
Yeah,
started.
sure. Okay, thanks. So, hi
Thank
all.
you.
Welcome to Hyderabad Power Platform User Group, June 2022 meetup, and I'm here to present my session on custom connectors in Power Platform. So before I go into the session, quickly, like we have been using various apps and services from Power Platform, like Power Apps, then Power Automate, Power BI, and many things. So what we do usually is from those kind of an apps, we try to connect to various underlying systems or services. We get the data from there, we process that data, and then we create our beautiful looking apps, flows, or anything else that we want. So from that perspective, connectors are pretty much important so that we can get connected to our data, and then we can process that data, use that data in our application. So in Power Platform, we have a number of connectors available by default through which we'll be able to connect to various services or system, or right from Azure, then SQL database, or many more. But at the same time, for most of the cases, we fall into the situation that we want to connect to some kind of an data for which the connectors are not available. So in those cases, we can build our own kind of an connectors, and we just call them as the custom connectors. So in this session we are going to see or talk more about those custom connectors with respect to Power Platform. So quickly, my introduction. Myself, Nanddeep Nachan. I am Microsoft MVP for Office Apps and Services, as well as Microsoft Certified Trainer, author of couple of books on SharePoint framework as well as SharePoint Hybrid with SharePoint 2019. And onto the right hand side, here are few of my social media handlers to get in touch with me. So if you want to have any of the further discussion with me on any of these topics, happy to get you connected on those. And you must be seeing this independent publisher logo here. So just last month, I have published a couple of connectors. First one is a Udemy, and then Sessionize kind of an custom connectors, and those are available right now for everyone to use in their apps, flows, even into the Azure Logic apps. So we will also see like what is mean by that independent publisher, and then how we will be able to create our own custom connector and maybe publish there. So in this process, even I will walk you through one of the demo of the custom connector that I have built. So the agenda for this session is we will have a look at the overview of custom connector, like what is mean by custom connector, and then what is the significance of that, what is the importance of having the custom connector, and then we will see how we can create our own custom connector. And then we will also see, like for example, if you are from the development background, or you or your organization, you do create your own APIs, and now you want to get those exposed to the outside world, or maybe within your organization, and you want to use them as the functionality inside Power Platform, then using those Azure APIs, how we can build our own custom connectors. And then lastly, I will quickly walk you through the custom connector for Sessionize, which I have customly built. So there we will see how that custom connector has been built, and then again how we will be able to use those Sessionize custom connector to quickly have the conference kind of an thing set up. All right, so with that, let's get into our first topic, like custom connector overview. Like as I said, whenever we want to get connected to any of the data, connectors are important. And then specifically, if there are no out of the box connector available, in that case we definitely need to go into depth and create our own custom connector. So connector is kind of an proxy, or you can say it as a wrapper around the APIs, which allows Power Automate, Power Apps, as well as the Logic apps to communicate with the underlying system or service that we have got, so that from there we can get the data process in our apps. So simply like these connectors help it make easier for the app and flow makers to connect to other apps, data, and devices in the cloud. So, whenever we want to create our own custom connector, there are a few things that we need to check. So you can see that if you refer onto the diagram onto the left hand side, here we have those kind of an core APIs. So if in case you don't see a connector available for your data which you want to consume in your Power Apps or flows, so the thing is, we should have some kind of an API, because these custom connectors are a wrapper around that particular API that can be consumed in Power Apps or Power Automate. So firstly, we should have the APIs available to us, and then around that we can create our connector. And once we have that connector available, those connector can be consumed in at least three things: Power Automate, Power Apps, as well as Logic apps. So at least throughout this session, we will see how we can create those custom connector and at least consume those in Power Apps and Power Automate. So it is like, should we always go for the custom connector development? Probably answer is no. Then what is the use case, or maybe what is the criteria to go into the custom connector? So first one is that probably identify or build the API. So if you see that the functionality that you are looking out for is not available out of the box, then your first task is to check the connector reference, just to determine that if the suitable connector already exists for the API or service you want to consume. And if the suitable connector doesn't already exist, then you can make your own custom connector. Otherwise, just go ahead with that. So this is your first step whenever you want to build your own custom connector. Second thing, now that you have made a decision to create the custom connector, in that case, obviously, since these custom connectors are wrapper around the APIs, you will have to describe the API. So for the Power Apps and Power Automate, to discover what triggers and actions are available from the API, you must identify them, and then you should create your custom connector. Because it is not just that you are the only person who is going to consume your custom connector, but there may be few other people, maybe few of the other app makers from your organization, or if you are taking a decision to have this custom connector available to the open source world, in that case you should describe your APIs, so that by looking at the API, someone who is consuming that API will be able to understand what is mean by this, what are the functionalities that one will be provided by your custom connector. And then once you describe your API, obviously you should use those connectors. So after the custom connectors are created in any of your environment, from there they can be used in the same way as the built-in connectors. So they can be built in one environment, they can be exported from there, and then again they can be used in other environments as well. The last thing, which is kind of an optional but good to have, is to certify and share the connector as an open source. Because custom connectors are only available in environments where their definition exists. So they are not available to other Microsoft customers. So by sharing the custom connector definition as kind of an open source, you make that custom connector available probably onto the GitHub for other customers to import their environments. So that you have your custom connector, you make it available to the outside world, they can import that into their environment. And then certifying the connector requires that you own the API or have the explicit permission to publish the connector from the API owner. So these are the kind of things that we need to always consider whenever we want to create the custom connectors. All right, so now that let's see like how we can define those connectors. So probably instead of just talking about and going through the slide, what I will do is I will just switch to my Power Automate, and then in the Power Automate, under under data, you should be able to see the custom connectors. So if you go to these connectors, these are all of the first party connectors which are available to you, which you can use directly in your environment. But now that if you go to the data and under that, if you browse to the custom connector, this is a place from where you will be able to define your connector. So just go on to the right hand side top, and then from here we have various options which I have listed down onto my slide as well, like create from blank, create from Azure service, open API file, Postman, or even import from the GitHub. So let us go through these one by one, because before we create our own custom connector, we need to understand this option very well. So if it is create from blank, that means you want to create those connector by defining the API on your own without taking the ready kind of an option available from Postman or maybe from the open API file. But here you will have more control over what you want to define, but at the same time, there will be huge manual effort that you want to take to create that connector from blank. All right. So whenever you want to manually create that connector in the portal, with this approach, you would use the API documentation and examples of inputs and outputs, and then you can define each action as well as trigger for that custom connector. So this approach is good for the simple APIs where you don't have the ability to import the definition for those, and then you can use this approach to refine the definition after you import them. But for example, if you're working with the complex APIs, probably this is not the preferred way because it will take most of your time. And again, since this one is a manual step, it is error prone. So in that case, what we can do is we can take advantages of the other options that we have. So let's say, for example, if you want to export from Azure, so if your API is built as the Azure App Service or Microsoft Azure function, or it is managed by the Microsoft Azure API management, which is one kind of an example we are going to look towards end of this session. So in that case, you can export from those services and it will automatically create the initial custom connector definition for you, so that at least you will have the initial part with you ready, and then if needed you can go ahead and define your own other parts. The other option, which is very much famous, is this Open API file or Open API definition. And nowadays, we mostly call them as a Swagger. So Open API is again specification that describes the REST, simplifying the task of developing and consuming any kind of an API by effectively mapping all the resources and operations that are associated with that API. And many services or API publish open API definition, and you can import it to describe the API in your custom connector. And then lastly, we do have this import Postman collection. So for example, you are connecting to multiple REST API endpoints. So from there, in the Postman, you create your own collection. So basically, Postman is a tool for testing your REST APIs, and then you can use this tool to perform the actions on the API that you want to describe, and then save them as a Postman collection. And this collection is then imported to describe the API in the custom connector. And currently, means even you can use this approach for the V1 kind of collections that we have in Postman. So simply once you go there, here are various options, and then again import from GitHub is something like Microsoft has already made one GitHub repository, open source repository available to us, and to which, for example, if you have your own idea to publish your connectors, you will be able to do that. So all of those certified connectors, that means the connectors which are available from the first party first party providers. For example, I can go into that and then I can show it to you. So all of the companies who own those APIs, so all those APIs are available here. So that means the companies who own those APIs have published their own connectors. And then we have few custom connectors as well as this independent publisher connector. So for example, if you don't own any of the API but that API is available as an open source API, in that case you can create your own connector and then you can use that or make it available to the entire world. So simply that from here, if you want to just test out any of that connector, you can choose that. You can choose which branch you want to test it out from this git repository, and then from there you can just select that connector and then you can start using the connector. So what we will do now is that probably we will just consume any of the existing API that we have got, and then again we will see how we'll be able to create our own API and then consume that as a custom connector in the Power Platform. But before that, let's say for example, if you just create the connector from blank, I will just call it as a blank connector, and then you can just continue with this. So this is a place where you can define maybe the logo for your connector. For example, if you are developing this API for your own organization, in that case you can have the logo of your organization so that this connector stand out from the other connectors that we have, so that everyone who is going to consume this custom connector within the organization, at least they will get that trusted feeling of having a look at this icon or logo of company, and then they can start using that. Second thing here is that we can have the background color. So preferably upload all of the PNG kind of an logos which have the transparent background, and then you can apply the background color from here so that you will be able to maintain that look and feel of your organization. Then optionally you can put the description about what this custom connector is all about, and then how it is helping the consumer to get those APIs. The other thing here is that since it is a wrapper around API, we just need to specify the host where it is hosted. Okay, so I will just here call it as a API .contoso.com. There is nothing existing like api.contoso.com, but just wanted to get you onto this screen, which is the authentication type, because so far we were just talking about consuming the APIs, but it is not like we can just directly go ahead and consume the APIs, because once we want to use the API, firstly we want to, or we have to get ourselves authenticated against that API, and then only we will be able to consume those APIs. So custom connector architecture supports working with authenticated APIs. So we can use probably no authentication, basic authentication, maybe if you have any of the API key, or OAuth 2.0. So maybe let's understand what is meant by each of those, because once we have the good understanding of this authentication, we will be able to choose the correct kind of an authentication before we export, or before we expose this kind of an custom connectors to the outside world or to the organization. So when you define the custom connector, you will identify how it should authenticate to the API. So authentication choices support all these kind of things which you see on the screen. So for example, if it is no authentication, which is pretty much simple, that this choice is for the API that allows anonymous access, and it is default if you don't configure any specific authentication type. So these are all of the APIs which are available publicly onto the internet, so we can use those anonymously without getting ourselves authenticated. Second kind of thing that we have here is the basic authentication. So this choice is for the API which requires username and password that needs to be sent with each of the requests that we make. So if you are dealing with username password, you can go ahead and select this basic authentication. And then here you can specify your username, password, and each request that comes to this custom connector will get authenticated using this combination. The third type of authentication that we have is the API key. Okay, so API key is kind of a token that client provides when making API calls. The API publisher typically provides the key and it must be included in each request from the custom connector. So here you can define like the label and the parameter name which are provided to you by the API publisher, and then with that we will be able to use that API key. So mostly you will be able to use that with header or query depending on the API publisher. So whenever we come across using the API key kind of an option, we have to rely on to the documentation produced by the API publisher. Okay, the last type of authentication that we have here is OAuth 2.0. So OAuth 2.0 is kind of an industry standard protocol for authorization. So this option can be configured for any API that uses OAuth 2.0. So all the pre-built configurations are available for you to select from for the Microsoft services like we can select maybe Azure or Google or Instagram or Live, all those kind of an selections are available. Even you will be able to see DevOps here as well. Yeah, Visual Studio Online we have even we will be able to use Git and all those things. So similar pre-built configurations are available for other services which are like Dropbox, Slack, Stripe, and then the others that you can see onto the screen. So this pre-built kind of configuration simplify what you need to provide to configure that identity provider. So for example, if you're simply using the Azure AD driven kind of an authentication, so only users from your Azure Active Directory should be able to get authenticated against your custom connector. You will be able to do that. So what you can do is in the Azure um, Azure AD portal, you can create the application ID registration and provide that app ID secret and then the login URL and the tenant ID here, so that only authenticated users from your organization will be able to consume this kind of an APIs. All right, so that covers for us like how we can work with those authenticated APIs, because whenever we want to define our own custom connector, it is pretty much important to find out what kind of an authentication authorization we are going to use. Okay, so with that, let's get into some kind of a demo, and we will see like how we can create the custom connector. Okay, so what we will do now here is maybe there is already one service available from Microsoft called as Contoso Invoicing. It is available on this particular URL called as Contoso Invoicing dot azurewebsites.net. And then what we are going to do is we are going to simply use this API. So we have all the API documentation here, because as I said, if you are creating your own API, we should have our documentation ready. And then for that, mostly you will see that all of the documentation nowadays are built in with open API definition, which is a Swagger. So from here we can see that we have various APIs to work with, like add invoice, get invoice, list invoice types, and many more. And from here we can see what kind of an operation we can do with that. So let's say for example post get, and then again even from this window itself we will be able to probably have the mock request done, and then we can just simply click on this try it out, and then we'll be able to get the data from the here as well. So I can just click on execute. It should go ahead and then give us some kind of an output that we need. So this is the sample API available from Microsoft, which we are going to use now to create the custom connector, and then we will use this custom connector in our Power Apps, Power Automate, wherever we want. So this is the API documentation that we have. So whenever you are using any of the custom connector from the publisher, look out for this documentation on what kind of an API is available. And for example, if you are the one who is going to create the custom connector, make sure that you have this kind of an documentation ready for your consumers. Second thing here is that we have this open API definition file, which is kind of an Swagger, a JSON file, which we can use to create our custom connector. So what I will do simply is I will right click save this onto my desktop. I will just call it as a swagger.json. So this is the open API definition file which we are going to use for creating our custom connector. And then this particular API is using the API key for authentication. So this is the API key which is generated for us, and we are going to use this API key uh, for um, for creating our custom connector or getting authenticated against that custom connector. Okay, so now that we have various options, probably you can create a new solution. Inside that you can create a custom connector, and then you can just use that into your solution. But just to keep it simple, what I will do is I will just simply go to my Power Automate and click on custom connectors. So this is the window that you will be able to see. From here, click on new custom connector, and then since we have downloaded that open API file, we will select this option, import an open API file. Again, for example, now that we also have this documentation available, if you want to go ahead, create this custom connector on your own, in that case, what you can do is you can create from blank and keep adding all these APIs available from this publisher, and then create your own connector manually, right? But what we will do is we will keep it simple. We will go ahead with this import open API file, and then I will just call it as, or probably let me just switch my environment because I already have one custom connector with the same name there. All right. Miss, it should not be an issue, but just to make it clear to everyone. So again, we will go to new custom connector. We will click open, import and open API file. I will call this connector as Contoso invoicing, and then we will use the same file which we had downloaded, the Swagger JSON file, to create our custom connector. So now that we have imported this, I will click on continue, so that this is the screen where we will be able to define the branding for your custom connector. So you can probably upload the connector icon. This one is the default icon available. If you want to change the icon background color, you can do that. Provide some kind of a description so that the consumer will be able to see what kind of an uh, API being exposed from here. So just quickly, like I will just add some kind of an icon, oh, sorry, background color here, which is just a random color. Okay, so what I will do now is that in the description I will just call it as a Contoso invoicing API, which we are going to use. And since this one is not sitting on any of the server, we will not select this box. But for example, if your APIs are sitting onto the server which is on premises, in that case you will have to configure the data gateway, on premises data gateway, to get connected to that service. So since this one is sitting onto the Azure app, we don't have to do that. Another thing here is that we can specify the scheme, which is HTTPS or HTTP. Obviously, this particular API is at HTTPS, so what we will also go ahead with HTTPS itself. The host where this particular API is available is this contoso.azurewebsites.net. So I will just take that host, add it here. For example, if you have any of the base URL, we can also get it added. So whenever we will create our own API, we will see how to use this base URL. But for now, we will just simply go ahead with the base URL as slash, and we will probably go into the security. So what I will do is maybe before I create the security, or let us go ahead with security. You can, at least what you can do is you can just save this connector by clicking the create connector. Otherwise, this connector will not get saved. So this is the first draft version of the connector that we are saving. And then again, from the open API definition file, that Swagger JSON file, it has already identified that we are going to use the open API file and then the API key from there. So if you want to change anything here, you can do that, but we will go ahead with the API key, and this is the API key which we are going to use once the connector is available. Now that let's get into the definition. So definition says about what are the endpoints available from that API which can be used in our custom connector. So from here you can see that we have at least 9 endpoints available, like add invoice, get invoice, list invoices, and many more. So these are all of the APIs available to us, and then from here we'll be able to see like what kind of an request that we need to make to get to that method, and then what kind of an query parameter we need to pass it on, and then again what kind of a response we will get. All those things are configured here. Similarly, for example, if you go into the list invoices, you'll be able to see the same information. And here you can see that at least whenever we are getting the list invoices, we have various query parameters which we can pass here optionally, like from date to date, status, and everything. But again, all those are optional kind of a thing. So with that, what we will do is again, yeah, miss, for example, if you just want to see like how this connector can be used in code as well, even from here you will be able to see that if you just want to use that in any of your C sharp based code, you can do that. Now that simply what we'll do is we'll just go to the test, and we don't have any connection created yet. So what I will do is I will click on new connection. It will take us to the separate window wherein we can provide the API key. So this is the API key provided by Microsoft. We will simply go ahead, use that API key, click on create connector, and then this here we'll be able to use that. So just click on refresh connections one more time, and then based on the date time when you had it created, you will be able to see that. What we will do is that now we want to test this connector. So simply, instead of adding the invoice, which is a complex thing, I will just simply go into list invoices, and then all of these query parameters which we had seen there are optional. So probably I will not pass anything. I want to list all of the invoices that we have got. So I'll just click on this test operation, and this is the response that we get. For example, once we get the status code as 200, that means the request was successful, and then we are able to get all of the information from there. So now that from here you can see that we were able to execute that, and then we got this kind of an output which you will be able to see as a JSON array. So this is the JSON array which contains information about each of the invoices that we have got, and then from here we will be also able to use this kind of an custom connector in our Power Automate as well. So for that, what we can do is I will go into my flows, or maybe I can just click on create, and we will try to consume this custom connector and get all the invoices. So we'll simply click on instant cloud flow because I don't want to wait on any of the trigger for this. So I will just go ahead with manual trigger, and I will call it as a Contoso invoicing flow. Okay. We will just get this flow created, and in the new step, if you go to the custom, here you will be able to see all of the custom connectors that you have available in your environment. So this was the custom connector that we had created, custom invoicing, sorry, Contoso invoicing, that we will select. And once we select that, all of the actions which are available with that custom connector will be able to list it out here. So again, we will go ahead and use the action, which is list invoices, which we just have tested. So we'll just select that particular action. Again, here what I will do is probably I will not uh, add anything here, because let's say we want to get all the results that we have, all the invoices that we have got, and then I will just okay. Before that, what we'll do is let us save this, and then let us see like what are the output that we get. We'll just go ahead and test this manually. Click on test, and then we should be able to sign into this, run the flow, and we will get the same output that we had seen in the custom connector. But now that we are using this custom connector lively inside our flow, and from here you can see that this is the entire response that we have received. Okay, so this is the all the response that we have received. What we can do probably is again we can click on edit. So all of the response is in the form of invoices that we have got. So let's say if you want to email these invoices to someone, in that case we have something called as data operation, and in that data operation we have one operation called as create HTML table. So what we will do is all of the invoices that we have received from the previous thing, we will just create HTML table out of it. So at the end, we will have the HTML table created out of that JSON format, which we just saw for all those invoices. And then in the next step, we will be able to send those as an email to to maybe your manager or whosoever interested in all these invoices. So just to keep it simple, I will just send it to me itself. So I will just click on this notification and I will select send me an email notification. Here again, I will say the subject as Contoso invoices, and in the body, we will select the output from the HTML table which was generated. And I will simply again click on save, and once it is saved, we will test it out. So let us test it manually one more time and run the flow. Okay. Okay, so the flow has been successful. If you have a look at the output of this HTML, then you will be able to see that all of the invoices which were in the JSON format, it has created a nice looking table here, and then it must have sent an email to me. So if I go into my Outlook here for this user, I should be able to use or I should be able to see the outcome of that. So here you can see that we have this Contoso invoices and all of the data will be able to see it here. All right. So this was pretty much simple, that how we can use the existing services that we have got or existing API that we have got, and then we can use that to create our own custom connector. So now that the obvious question is like, let's say for example, you or your organization already had built few of the APIs, or maybe not have created yet, but now that you want to use the data that you have in your maybe SQL table or maybe somewhere else, and then you want to create or you want to use that in your Power Apps app. So in that case, how you can create those APIs and then how you can use them in the custom connector. So let us go into that, and then we will see like how we will be able to consume those Azure APIs as the custom connectors. All right. So for that, what I will do is I will just simply go into my development environment. So if you are not from the development environment, probably what you can do is you can just open up this Visual Studio 2019 or 2022, whichever thing that you have, and then just start by creating the new project. So in this new project, you can just simply select the API kind of a project that you want to create, search for that, and then probably you can start with ASP.NET Core Web API. So these are kind of an project through which we'll be able to create some kind of an RESTful HTTPS kind of an services, through which we'll be able to expose the data from our server services or maybe servers to the outside world, or even for the internal consumption. So now that, let's say for example, if you have data somewhere for which we don't have the connector, and then we want to use that data and then create a custom connector out of it, and then use that custom connector into the Power Apps or Power Automate. So in that case, let us see how we can do that. So firstly, like what does these custom APIs? So custom APIs are kind of a normal REST APIs that expose some kind of an functionality. So it could be your custom build functionality, or it could be the functionality which is available natively by any of the service that you are consuming. So whether you are trying to build some complex logic or connecting to your existing system, you can simply create the REST API in your favorite platform using any language and describe that using Swagger and use that into Power Apps. Okay, so in this particular example, which is on the screen, we will build the REST API using ASP.NET Web API in C Sharp, and which includes endpoint called as products, or the product API we can see, which will return the list of products. So at least here we are not connecting to any of the underlying service, but we are creating that products in memory, and then we will return those products. So we will just keep it pretty much simple. We will keep all those records of the list into the memory, and we will use those. So let me just get you introduced to this solution that we had created. So this is a solution that we have got, and then inside this we have this API project created. Here we do have few of the controllers available. For example, whenever you will create the API project in Visual Studio, by default you will get something called as weather forecast controller, which is the default controller available to you. And then on top of that, you can create your own controller. So this is another controller that I have created. It should have been into the controllers folder, but whenever you want to create a folder, create a controller, what you can do is click on add new, and then from here you should be able to select new item, and then from here you will be able to create your own controller. So you can choose either the API controller, which is empty, or maybe the MVC controller empty, or maybe start with some kind of an read write actions. So to keep it simple, I just have used this API connector, and then which is empty one, and I have started creating that connector. Um, and again, we do have few more things, but probably before that, let's get into the code of this particular product controller. So what we have here is we have a product with few kind of an attributes. For example, ID, name, details, and price. And then simply we have a list of all the products. For example, pencil, pen, sharpener. These are the three products I'm creating in memory. And then simply I'm exposing one method called as get, which is exposed through this decorator called as http get, and I'm just returning all those products that we see here. So this is the in memory build products, and then we are going to simply expose them to our API. So now that we just have this API available to us, but probably this is not the good way to just use this API. So now let's say, for example, if I run this, and then we will be able to browse to the weather forecast controller or weather forecast API, as well as to the product API. So let it run, and then probably I can explain it to you. But quickly, like on the high level kind of steps that we need to do. Firstly, that we need to use the Visual Studio to create the REST API. Second thing, we just need to deploy this API somewhere, and we will use Azure App Service for that. Thirdly, that we need to register the custom API to use in the Power Apps, and then we can build Power Apps which consumes those APIs. So now this is the weather forecast API which is available to be consumed. At the same time, for example, I can go to my API by clicking onto slash API slash products. So now just imagine that this is the API which I have created as a API publisher, and if I give this API to you, so anyone who is looking at this API will never come to know like what kind of an API I have written, because this is pretty much simple plain API. But for example, when you go into the complex world, if you don't have any documentation, no one in the world will be able to know like what you have written, because you are the only person in the world who will know what you have written. But even if you revisit it after maybe 2 or 3 months, even probably you will lose the context of what you had written. So just from that point of view, we should always have the good documentation for our APIs. Okay, so whenever you will write any kind of an API, you should have the documentation for that. So in that case, documentation doesn't need to be produced in the form of maybe Word file, Excel file, or PowerPoint slides. uh, the API that we write, it should um, have the means it should enable you to expose what you want to say in the API itself. So for example, let's take the example that we had seen before, which was the Contoso invoicing. It is here. So in the Contoso invoicing, if you see here, so here we had the documentation available, which was in the form of Swagger. So whenever you will create your own API, you should also create this kind of an Swagger documentation, so that anyone who is going to consume this API at least have some kind of an view that what kind of an API you're exposing, what kind of an methods available to that, and then how you will be able to authorize, authenticate with those API. What are the input parameters? What are the output parameters? If in case there is error, what to do, and all those things. So we will see how we can create that. So it is pretty much simple. We don't have to much worry about how to create those Swagger. So firstly that we just need to add the support for the Swagger. So again, Swagger has got three things. First one is the open API specification, which is set of rules to describes the REST API. And then we do have Swagger itself, which is the set of open source tools built around those open API specification. And then thirdly, we have something called as Swashbuckle, which is the NuGet package. So which is again kind of a Swagger tool for documenting your .NET kind of an API. So without making it too much complex, let's see how we can add the Swagger support to the APIs that we create, and then how we can document all those things. So simply to do that, right click on your project, go to manage NuGet packages, and then from here we'll be able to add the NuGet or Nugget, whatever you say, all those packages, and just go to the browse and try to search for Swashbuckle. So since I'm using this for ASP.NET Core, I will go ahead and use swashbuckle.ASP.NET Core, which is a specific package available for documenting the .NET APIs written in C Sharp. So I will just get this one, uh, this uh, what do you say, the module added to our code, and then this will not just do the magic, because now that we just have added the support for the Swashbuckle to create the Swagger kind of a documentation. Next step is that we need to configure the Swagger, and then we can do that in something called as startup.cs. So we have startup.cs, which you will be able to see in your project structure. So this is a startup.cs, and in this we have a few methods that we should use. So firstly that we have method called as configure services, and in this method we should add support to use the Swagger generator. So if you write this code services.add Swagger gen, which is Swagger generator, this will help you to generate the Swagger documentation for your REST APIs. So this method adds all those Swagger generator to the service collection that we have. Next thing that we need to do is in the configure method, we need to add these two things. First one is app.use Swagger, so that we just need to add this Swagger middleware to the HTTP processing pipeline so that we can use them. And then this middleware serves the generated Swagger documentation as a JSON endpoint that we need to specify it here. Okay, so that means now that we have the Swagger documentation ready for our API, and then what Swagger does, it Swagger UI looks at this JSON and automatically generates the documentation for your product API. So now that, for example, if I run this project one more time, and then simply if I just go to the slash Swagger, you can see that the documentation is already generated. So just by looking at the code which I had written, so even you can see at my code, I don't have any documentation, any comment being written here, but still it goes ahead create that kind of a documentation, so that we'll be able to use that in our custom connector, so that the outside world, they will be able to at least look at what kind of an APIs we are exposing, how to get authenticated there, and then again how to consume those. Okay, so that was pretty much simple. Now that we will see, like we have this API. So what I did quickly is that I have published this API onto the um, Azure portal. So for example, if I go to the portal.azure.com, I already have it published onto my Azure web app, so that because the custom connector should always refer to those APIs from the public domain. And again here, if you don't want to use the Azure app, Azure web app, in that case, probably you can use the public tunneling in the form of ngrok or ngrok, whatever you can say, and then you can do the mapping of your local host with the ngrok, and then from there you'll be able to see that. So at least I already have that same thing being deployed to my Azure web app. So let us explore that quickly, and then we can move to something called as Azure API management. All right, so if I go here, let it go to the URL. Okay, so this is the URL for my Azure API. So at least I don't have any UI which was created for my API, but now that if I go to the Swagger, we will be able to see that it is the same API that I had. So simply I have published that local API onto the Azure so that we'll be able to consume that in our custom connector. Okay, so again, we cannot do that directly. We need to have something called as API management. So here we have Azure API management, which I already have created API management service because it takes almost 15 to 20 minutes to get created. So Azure API management is kind of a fully managed service that enables organizations to maybe publish, secure, transform, maintain, and monitor all of the APIs that we have got. So simply that what we can do is that now we want to expose our API through API M. So in that case, from here you can see that we have various things here like what is the gateway URL, developer URL, and everything. Here we have got something called as APIs, or even you will be able to access it from here as well. So just click on that APIs, and then we will have to create the API. So from here you can see that we can create the API from blank, for example HTTP. Again, for example, if you have got open API, if you have got WSDL or logic app or app service, will be able to use any of that. So since we have this Swagger documentation available with us, Swagger support available with us, we will go ahead and create that with Open API. So I'll just click on Open API here, and here we can just specify the URL for our JSON. So again, here we can either give the URL entirely, or maybe we can download the JSON file, upload it here. So I will just go to this particular URL which has got the JSON reference, and then I will just simply use that here. The and again from here you can see that just by looking at the definition of this Swagger, it has automatically detected the title of our API, and then it has already populated all those fields. Again, if you want, you can use the API URL suffix here. So let's say I will just use it as a product API short form, and then I will simply go ahead and create this. So this is the API URL prefix. Probably even I can show it to you when we will be able to use that in our custom connector. So earlier, if you see, we just had use slash, but now that we will, instead of slash, we will use this prod API there. So it takes generally 10-15 seconds to get this open API specification created. Okay, it is done, I guess. So now that it is just created, but it doesn't have the reference to the web service where we have it hosted. So for that, what we can do is that on this API, we will go into the settings, and in this settings, we can specify that web service URL where it is hosted. So here, this one is hosted onto this Azure websites.net. So I will just copy this, and then I will simply paste it here, web service URL, because this is the place where our web service is hosted. I will just click on save so that this one will be reflected. And before we start using this API into our custom connector, firstly we will go ahead and test it out. So again, in the test you can see that it has listed both the APIs, the weather forecast, which is the out of the box one, and this is the one that we had created. So I will just select this one which we had created, click on send, and then this should get do all the validation, and then we should be able to get the response. So these are all the three products which I had hard coded in my code, which is pencil, pen, and sharpener, and then we are able to get that data there. Okay, so now that we have entire this thing with us, let us see how we will be able to create the custom connector on top of it. So for that, what you can do is just select your API whichever you have got, and then just click on create power connector. So this is pretty much simple. Once you do that, this will automatically take the API which you want. So either you can use the product API or the echo API which was available differently. You can just click on create and it will create the API for you. And then again, you will be able to use the same API inside of your okay. Okay, it is saying that product API is already available there. So what I will do is I'll just change the name to product API 123, and we will just click on create. So this will just create the connector there as well, and then we will be able to use that custom connector in our Power Apps as well as Power Automate. Okay, so let it do. Alright, so for what I will do is probably I will not create the Power Apps based on it. I can just show you that custom connector, and obviously it should work. You can trust me on that, right? So what I will do is I will again go back to the custom connectors, and then once that publishing is done, you will be able to see that we have this product API available here, and then we can simply go ahead test this one as we did for our previous Contoso invoicing, and then we'll be able to use that as well. So with just the 4 minutes remaining, what I will do is I will go into the connector which I had created customly for the session eyes, and then we will see like how that custom connector can be used in your Power Apps and Power Automate whenever you are organizing in any kind of an events. So everyone must be familiar with the session eyes, which is a smarter way to manage call for papers, speakers, and agenda for your conference. So the connector that we had created on top of that will help you to connect to the session eyes to get the conference related information about all of the speakers we have got, all of the sessions, conference agenda. And again, this connector can be used with Power Apps, Power Automate, and Logic App as well. Okay, so the connector does not need any authentication, this one specific, and then once it is set up, this connector support the actions like get the list of session for your conference, or even get the list of speakers for your conference. So all that documentation is already available. I will share the link in the chat window as well. So this is the sessionize independent connector which I had published to the Power Automate, and then from here you will be able to see all those kind of an actions which can be used. Okay, so quickly let's see like the reason why we are using this or why I had developed this custom connector. So again, it is used for my own use case, because as a part of community collaboration, I along with my other colleagues run the local user group called as Pune Tech Community, and as a part of our community initiative, we organize various events across the year, and then we open call for speakers, we invite the speakers, and we have them talk on some diverse topics. We build the agenda, we publish those free events, and then again, simply that every time we come across at least two use cases. First one is sharing that conference agenda by email to all the attendees, and then just create some kind of a good looking app through which we'll be able to use that custom connector for our session eyes purpose. So again, for example, if you haven't seen the session eyes, this is how it looks. So once you go into the session eyes, all of the events that you organize will be able to see here. So I will just go into the past event that we had done for the Power Platform, and from here you will be able to see all the session, all the speakers that we have got. But if you want to make use of this connector, first thing is that you need to go into the API/embed. By default, all of the APIs that we have got here, they use the format of embed style HTML, because through that we'll be able to embed the session as information into our website. So what we need to do is either we can create a new endpoint or just open maybe the default endpoint and change that format to something called as JSON, because through JSON we'll be able to use that into our custom connector. All right, and then again, once you click on get code, from here you'll be able to get all the information about sessions or speakers that we have got here. And then this connector is built on top of that only. So what I will do is I will simply go back to my Power Apps, and then I will just create one app. So probably I might overrun by 2 minutes, but I just want to quickly show you how we will be able to use that. So I will just select this one as a conference agenda, and then use the tablet format. And once you create this Power Apps app, you will be able to use this customized connector. So I will just simply create from a gallery, and then I will connect to my sessionized connector. So again, you can click on connector, or maybe here you can search for the sessionize. And this is the sessionized connector available to everyone by default. Just select that, and then again, for all the items here, we will use that connector to get all of the speakers from our session. Okay, so I will just click on get speakers. Since this does not need any authentication, I don't want to use or get authenticated myself. Simply thing that it needs is the sessionize identifier, which we will be able to get from API/embed again. And since this particular endpoint is using JSON format, I will go ahead, use this ID, pass it on here, and then we will be able to see all of the speakers that we have got. So at least we have some data, but we will have to do the binding to the control to see them. So what I will do is for this, oh, sorry, for this image, I will do the this item dot we have profile picture, and then all of the profile picture we should be able to see. For this other thing, we will go ahead and then use the full name. Okay. And then for the below thing, I will go ahead this item dot maybe tagline, where we have some information about those speakers. Okay, why did this one came up? But okay, all right. But yeah, Miss Adler, this is how we'll be able to see all the information about all of the speakers that we have got. Again, it must have pulled the image as well, but not sure why it did not. But all right, that's fine. So what we can do is, now that I will just copy paste the same um grid here as it is, because we just now want to build the use case that whenever we will click on the speaker, it will show the relevant topics which is being delivered by that speaker in the conference. So again, what I will do for that is I just want to get to the get sessions endpoint. So I will use that. Again, this is the same data, or sorry, the same ID of the session is that we will use. And then here we will have all those sessions. And if I do the dot sessions, I should be able to use that. Okay, so here we have got all these sessions, but now that we just want to filter out on our selection. But before that, what happens is that, for example, if I get into the get code, here you will see that, for example, if I go into the get sessions, sorry, which is here, sessions list, right? So if I go here, you can see that it lists out everything, but here we have another filter called as group name. So that group name has to be all, so that it should be able to see show all the filters. So this is a group name all. So we just want to apply that filter on top of it. So for that, what I will do is I will just do the lookup quickly, and then I will just filter it out based on the group name. Oops. Oh, okay. So what I will do is, instead of getting those sessions earlier, I will simply uh, do the group name here. Okay. And then those group name will be all. So we just want to get the sessions where the group name is all. And now that we will just filter it out based on the selection done by the user. So we will just filter out all of those sessions and just focus on the sessions where the ID of that particular sorry, this should be sessions. ID of that particular selection is in the gallery which we had selected. So let's say this one is a gallery one, but selection made by the user dot sessions, whichever delivered by that um, speaker, and then dot id to get to that particular session id, and then this should give us all of the sessions which are delivered by that user. Simply I will just use the title here, without by just saving some time, and then I will simply use the title kind of a thing for the for the session. Now that, for example, if I run this, you can see that as I go through the selection of the users, all of the sessions delivered by them will be seen here, right? So once I'm selecting onto the user, we are selecting all of the sessions delivered by them. So this was the simple use case, like why we had built that custom connector called a sessionize, and even you will be able to find that find this custom connector whenever you are creating your own apps or flows, and then you will be able to use that. Similarly, there is another use case through which we'll be able to even use that with Power Automate, just to send the agenda as like we had sent the invoices. But with that, thank you very much. I hope I explained how to use those custom connector, and wish you best with using the custom connector as well as creating one for your own needs. All right. Thank you very much. With that, back to you, Ritika.
Yep. Thank you, Nandadeep. That was really insightful, and I really like the connector you built. It will help us, organize or manage the events in a better way. So, thank you so
Yeah.
much for that. And
Yeah.
I
Thank
see
you very
we
much.
have, Mhm, no problem. And I see we have a couple of questions on the chat. So, if you can answer those on the chat, that would be helpful because I know we are a bit over time
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
for
Yeah.
the
Sorry for
session.
that, but
No
okay.
problem. It's
I will.
fine.
Yeah. I will answer those. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nandadeep. And for all the attendees, if you have any questions for Nandadeep, I have earlier shared the social media credentials on the chat. Otherwise, you can view the additional social media credentials here on the screen. So, in case of any questions, please reach out to Nandadeep.
Yeah. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Nandadeep. It was really nice to have you here today.
Yeah. All my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that was about custom connectors. Now, next up, we have another session, and in this session, we are going to talk about how you can create a Canvas app that can take pictures and save them into a SharePoint list. And for that, we have Einar with us here today, and he's going to talk about this exciting use case of taking the pictures and then allowing your users to upload it to SharePoint directly. So, hey, Inar, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, perfectly fine.
Good, good. Yeah,
Um, okay, so welcome to Hyderabad Power Platform User Group, and we're really excited to hear your session.
yeah. Thank you very much. I'm very thankful for this opportunity. So I'm just gonna get my.
Mm-hmm.
I have a few slides.
Okay,
Let me share my screen.
okay,
And I want to share this one. All right. I guess you can.
okay, we can see your screen.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. Okay. It's just I think 3 slides, including this one. So just a little bit about myself so you know where I'm coming from, etc. I live and work in Iceland. It's not the nearest neighbor to Hyderabad or India, but well, I have a lot of friends and colleagues there, so which is really nice. And I've lived and worked in Sweden, Norway, and England. I've been in this IT business for about 25 years, doing Microsoft Business Application for 18 years. And one year ago, I started the Icelandic Power Platform User Group. and now I'm returning the favor since Ritika did an excellent session for us in the Icelandic Power Platform group. So this is also an example of different user groups working together. So that's awesome. And yeah, I'm really love heavy metal, and that's my go-to thing when I need to blow off some steam. That's going to a metal concert. And I'm also a volunteer search and rescue member here in Iceland. So, all right, a little bit on the demo I'm going to do. And first of all, I want to thank Reza Dorani for everything that he has done on YouTube, etc. He has lots of demos and stuff, and I got these ideas from him and learned how to do those demos. So just a shout out to yet another brilliant person in the community. So yeah, this demo focuses on saving pictures in a SharePoint list using the attachments field. We can, of course, save pictures in multiple ways, but this particular demo session will just focus on this uh, particular way of saving pictures. So, and the key to do so is to use a collection, like we see here, an example on the screen. And then when we take the pictures, we put them in a collection with this format. So this is the format that the attachment field in the SharePoint list uses. So we have the display name and the ID, can be whatever we want it to be. And then we have the value, which is then the photo from the camera. And then we do a few settings in the Canvas app. All right, let's then just dive directly into our demo. And to begin with, I just want to show you this very simple SharePoint list with one record in here. And as I say, we are using the attachments field. So when you create a new SharePoint list, this one is probably hidden. So you can go here, say show hide columns, and then we get a list of all those system standard columns that we can display, and the attachments is one of those columns. So we just check here, click apply, and then that one is visible. So that's it. With we don't need to do anything else in the SharePoint list. And we can see here I have one record with 3 pictures taken on my web camera, and then I also grab a signature with the pen tool and save that here as a picture. So that's our backend. Oops, sorry. And now let's look at our app. What I did, I just created the app based on the SharePoint list. So we get this very familiar look and feel. Those 3 screens you get: the browse, the details, and the edit. And then I have made some adjustments in here, and we can have a look at those now. So I also have a collection showing below on the edit screen, showing the attachments. And when I click the button to navigate, I simply load the attachments into a collection. And then for the form, this is just the regular edit form. And here we have the attachment card. And on the attachment cards, the trick here is to say the default value is the collection. And then we get those pictures and the signature here. And since I haven't loaded this, the collection here is not showing anything. So if I play the app, go into the details, yeah, everything looks good. Then we see the collection here. This is a gallery with the collection, and then if I click edit, then we see those here. We can hide this control if we want to. And then if I take Bob Ross and turn him up to the side and click here, we get a new picture in the collection and we get it here. Say submit, and if everything works okay, now we should have a new picture here in the attachments with our good friend Bob Ross. Yeah, turning sideways. And this is how we can add pictures and signatures. And let me show you how that's done. Sorry, I'm just grabbing some water. Okay. Like I mentioned in the slides, the trick is the collection. So here I have my camera object, and then on the on select event, I just set a variable for the image name, which I use then as the display name and the ID. So, and this can be whatever you want it to be. I have a text field below the camera object, allowing the user to add some basically a prefix, and then I just take the date down to the second to get a unique name of the image. We could also use GUID for this to get unique image and IDs and names. And if we don't, then the control will treat multiple images as one. So the names and the ID need to be unique. And then I simply grab the photo from the image object, and then that's of course just self.photo, and that goes into the collection. And then I reset the data card value for the attachments, and that's basically it. Doing so adds those things to the data card itself, this object here, and then on the data card value for the attachments, to make sure that the collection and the attachment data card are in sync, then on each of those events, if I add, remove, or do an undo, on remove, then we basically take whatever's in the attachments and update or recreate the collection with those things. And that's the trick, to keep those two in sync in here. All right, the signature I do a little bit differently than we have just the standard pen input pad. There is nothing specific I do around the input pad, but then I simply have a button down here saying sign, and this, yeah, I feel is a good way to, if this would be something for a customer signing something, for service received, then it's good. Yeah, you make them sign the make the signature with the pen input field, and then they have to physically click something by saying yes, I agree. So that's why I have this button down here, and then that's exactly the same as when we are taking pictures. Create a variable, and then just hard-coded here, signature underscore, and then the date, and then that goes into the same collection. The same way, but now I'm taking the image from the pen input, and again reset the data card value, and this is it. So we can go here, play, create a demo, create a record. All looks good. Yeah, we have Bob Ross facing this way, and Mr. Penguin goes here. Take one picture, and then Mr. Penguin goes here, and then turns sideways, and then he goes here, and Bob Ross turns also a little bit sideways, and now we've taken pictures of everything that we are doing inspection on. And then if I click here, then that goes out of the collection, and then in again. So this is how these two elements interact. As I say, this is just a regular gallery. It's showing one picture. We could add a delete button down here, and then we just have to make sure that we update this control in here. So yeah, let's take another one of Bob Ross like this, and then we make a signature. And then I click the sign button, and then as we can see, we get the image underscore, which is this one. If I say picture, and then we get the picture prefix, and then the button, that's just a simple form submit. And then see the collection here. This is loaded from the attachments, and then again when we edit, see those in here, and we can add the picture just with Bob Ross. and submit that, and then we see everything in here. And just the last thing I haven't talked about before is the gallery down here, and that's outside the form. Everything else is within the form, and to get the best experience when working with the attachments field is to basically have the camera and the pan input as an element as elements on the attachment data card, just like we have, and then the buttons and everything. It's all, so the sign button is also an element under this attachments data card. I have been trying to play around a little bit with a scenario where we have a separate screen for taking pictures and taking signatures, but I'm not quite getting the data card here, this one, the list of attachments and the gallery to stay in sync. And the trick to update the values is resetting the actual data card value for the attachments. This we can only do within the attachment control itself. So, and it's definitely doable, but I haven't had the time to put that all together and use it like that. And then, yeah, just also to show you on the detail screen, and it's just a gallery here, also showing the collection. So this is the way, like the Mandalorian said. So that's basically it. And if you have any questions or comments or thoughts about this approach, then yeah, I'm more than happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Einar, for sharing this, nice demo here. I do see one question on the chat, which is, are you using a flow to save attachments, or is it just the form control?
Yeah, it's just the form control. There is, I have the SharePoint list in here. Good question. And if we look at the Power Automate one, then there are no flows in here. And the key is, in this case, is to collect the images from the camera object in a collection formed exactly like this. And we can have whatever we want for the display name and the ID. And then to show the items from the collection in and save them with the submission of the form is that we say the default of the attachment data card is the collection of images, and everything else is just the standard from when we create the form. So the update is just set on the on the data card attachments, and there is nothing else. The data field is just the attachments from the SharePoint list, and then, as I say, the only thing we need to do is take care of is on this control here, which shows the uh, files, images in the attachment field. Then we need to handle these events. So on add and on remove, and I simply recreate the collection with everything that's in this attachments data card, and that's how the collection in the gallery here and this stays in sync. So no, there are no flows. This just happens with the by showing whoops just by showing this one or having this one for the collection. So but of course we can use a flow to save one or more pictures. That's, as I say, that's just another method of doing things, and definitely for some usage scenarios we would like to do that, and then in some scenarios we would like to use it like this.
This is super cool, Einar. And personally, I would say that even when I think of patching images or something, I always go with the flow approach. But I'm really excited to try this out by generating the schema in a way where it can directly be added to the attachment. So, I think this is just, wonderful.
Yeah, you using the flows that gives you probably more options on various user interfaces and layouts, because then this is doing it this way, then it gets really tightly coupled with the form element.
Hmm.
So we basically, to get the best experience, need to build it within the form. So yeah,
Definitely.
and
Mhm.
like with
And I
everything
think
else,
this would be faster also rather than attaching a flow and then managing the data there. With the app, just with one control, it would be faster and it would be easier for us to manage. So I think this is really cool.
yeah, exactly. And I am helping one large insurance company here in Iceland,
Hmm.
and they are doing a proof of concept for their board of directors and the ones that make decisions on if they should start to implement and use the Power Platform and Power Apps to do exactly this. So if a person wants to insure their house or flat or something, then they always send a person to go and do an on-site inspection, taking pictures, making notes, etc., etc. And then I showed them how to do this, and they are using exactly this method for their kind of proof of concept app to do
Hmm.
so. And the reason I did is because this is a quite quick and simple way of just showing how we can go from, like they're now, they're doing everything by paper, they are not even taking pictures. So we are digitizing a process that's on paper, and they can, and they are up and running with a very highly functional proof of concept in just a few days.
Yep. Sounds good. Okay, so I think that was our only question on the chat for now, Einar. But attendees, if you have any questions for Einar about this approach, please reach out to him. I have shared his LinkedIn and Twitter earlier on the chat, so please feel free to reach out in case of any questions.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Other
Please
than
do.
that, yes,
Yeah,
please go
sorry.
ahead.
I just want to emphasize. Yeah, please reach out on LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever. And if you have any questions or anything, and I'm always happy to talk and help out.
Definitely. Okay, so with that, I think that's it for now. Unless, Ina, you have anything else to share with our attendees, maybe some URLs or any words of wisdom. But other than that, we are done. So, is there anything you would like to share?
No, not. I just well, I want to emphasize and maybe encourage you to look up Reza Dorani. Can I? I'll send you, Ritika, this URL,
Yep.
and Reza has a fantastic YouTube channel. So, so yeah, I encourage you to take a look there.
Okay. Definitely. With that, thank you, Ina, for joining us today and sharing this cool demo with us, for sharing or for uploading the images directly to SharePoint with the help of form control. So that was really insightful, and we were happy to have you here on our June 2022 meetup.
Yeah, thank you very much as well. I'm really happy to have this opportunity.
Okay. So with that, guys, that's it for today. Next month we will meet again with another set of interesting topics with another speakers, and then we will talk about more interesting things on Power Platform. In the meanwhile, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. Or if you have any use case that you would like to share with the word, and you would like to come on one of our next meetups, then also please either reach out to me or Yash. And thank you so much all for joining, and we will meet next month. Take some rest and take care. Bye bye.